for 12 years. I convinced myself they simply mixed up the days. It was the only way to survive the memory of standing in my cap and gown, scanning the bleachers for parents who never arrived, but when a stranger emailed me proof that my humiliation was planned in ink, my carefully constructed life collapsed. I did not change my name to hide from the world. I changed it to escape the people who raised me. My name is Sadie Long, but that is not the name on my birth certificate. I bought the name Sadie Long 10 years ago, along with a one-way bus ticket and a resolve so cold it felt like armor. At 34, I live in Morro Bay, a city that smells of salt water and wet pavement, where the fog rolls in thick enough to hide anything you do not want the world to see. It is a good place to be a ghost. I work as a communications manager at Juniper Slate, a nonprofit organization tucked into a brick building on the edge of the harbor. We help first-generation adult learners finish their degrees, single mothers who dropped out to work double shifts, fathers who promised their dying parents they would walk across a stage, people who feel like they missed their shot. It is good work. It is noble work. And every time I write a press release about the transformative power of education, I feel a hollow ache in the center of my chest that I have learned to ignore. My coworkers know me as the quiet woman who always hits her deadlines, brings excellent coffee, and never talks about her family. They think I am private. They do not know I am in hiding. I have built a life here that looks fine from the outside. I have a one-bedroom apartment with exposed brick and too many houseplants. I have a savings account. I have Leah Mercer, the director of programs, who is the closest thing to a best friend I have allowed myself to have. But the foundation of this life is brittle. It is built on the premise that if I never look back, the past ceases to exist. I was wrong. It started on a Tuesday in early May, the kind of humid, overcast day that makes your skin feel too tight. We were hosting a donor appreciation event at Hallowell Community College. The auditorium was packed with 300 people, local business owners, scholarship recipients, and city council members. I was standing in the wings, clutching a clipboard, checking the microphone levels for the third time. Our keynote speaker was a young man named Marcus, a scholarship recipient who had overcome homelessness to earn his nursing degree. He was nervous. I could see the sweat beading on his forehead under the stage lights. When he walked out to the podium, he looked small against the velvet curtain. He started well. He spoke about sleeping in his car, about studying by the light of a street lamp. But then, a phone rang loudly in the front row. It was a jarring, discordant ringtone that went on for 10 seconds too long. A few people chuckled. Someone coughed, and Marcus froze. He just stopped. His eyes went wide, darting around the room as if he had suddenly realized he was being watched. The silence stretched out, thick and uncomfortable. A man in the back row, perhaps thinking he was being helpful or perhaps just being cruel, shouted, "Cat got your tongue. Son?" The laughter that followed was sparse, but it was enough. Marcus took a step back, his hands shaking. He looked ready to bolt. I did not think. I did not check with my boss. I simply walked out onto the stage. My heels clicked rhythmically on the hardwood. I walked straight to the podium, gently touched Marcus on the shoulder, and took the microphone from the stand. The feedback whined for a split second, and the room went quiet. I looked out at the sea of faces, strangers, all of them, and I felt a surge of protectiveness that was almost violent. It is hard to speak when you are waiting for the floor to drop out from under you, I said. My voice was steady, lower than usual, amplifying through the speakers. Marcus is not pausing because he forgot his words. He is pausing because when you have had to fight for every inch of ground you stand on, silence does not feel like peace. It feels like danger. I should have stopped there. I should have handed the mic back to Marcus and retreated to the shadows. But the adrenaline was humming in my veins, and I saw a woman in the second row nodding, her eyes wet. We talk about graduation as a finish line, I continued, abandoning the talking points I had written days ago. But for some of us, the hardest part is not the studying. It is not the exams. It is the terror that you will do everything right. You will work until your fingers bleed, and you will look out into the crowd on your big day and realize that the people who were supposed to clap for you kept their hands in their laps. You realize that your achievement is an inconvenience to them. I took a breath. The room was dead silent. "But you finish anyway," I said, looking directly at Marcus now. "You finish because the degree is the one thing they cannot take back. It is the one thing that belongs only to you." I handed the microphone back to Marcus. He took it, steadied himself, and finished his speech to a standing ovation. I left the stage and went straight to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. My hands were trembling. I did not know where those words had come from. That phrase, "kept their hands in their laps," was not something I had thought about in 12 years. It was something I had written in a thank you card to my parents, a card I had torn up and thrown in a gas station trash can on my way out of Ohio. I thought that was the end of it. I went home, drank a glass of wine, and went to bed early. The next morning, the world had shifted. I walked into the office at 8:30, and the receptionist, a sweet girl named Chloe, looked up at me with wide eyes. "Sadie," she said, "have you seen the internet?" She turned her monitor around. There was a video paused on the screen. It was a shaky recording from the auditorium. Taken from the 4th or 5th row, the title read, "This woman just explained my entire life in 60 seconds. Chloe pressed play. I watched myself walk onto the stage. I looked taller on screen than I felt. I sounded authoritative, almost regal, and then I heard the words again. The people who were supposed to clap for you kept their hands in their laps. "It has 40,000 views," Chloe whispered. "It was posted 6 hours ago." My stomach dropped. "That is impossible." "Local news picked it up," she said. "The Morro Bay Gazette posted it on their Facebook page. They are calling it the Speech of the Year." I felt a cold prickle of sweat on the back of my neck. Visibility was dangerous. Visibility was the one thing I had carefully engineered my life to avoid. I was the person behind the camera, the person writing the press release, never the face on the screen. My boss, the executive director, called me into her office 10 minutes later. She was beaming. "Sadie, this is incredible," she said, gesturing to her tablet. "The comments are overwhelmingly positive. People are asking who you are. Channel 4 wants to do a live interview with you and Marcus this Friday." "No," I said, too quickly. She blinked. "Sadie, this is great exposure for Juniper Slate. We could launch the summer fundraising campaign off the back of this." "I am not a public speaker," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "Marcus is the story. I was just filling time." "You were inspiring," she insisted. "Just think about it, please." I went back to my desk and stared at my computer screen. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I felt exposed, like a layer of skin had been peeled away. I opened the video again, watching it on mute. I looked at the comments. I felt this in my soul. Who is she? She sounds like she has been through it. I wish someone had said this to me 20 years ago. And then, buried in the flood of praise, I saw a comment from a user with no profile picture. Posted 3 minutes ago. "She has quite an imagination." I stared at the words until they blurred. It was generic. It could be a troll. It could be anyone. But the phrasing gnawed at me. Imagination. That was my father's word. "Sadie has such an active imagination." He would say to my teachers when I told them I didn't have lunch money, "Sadie imagines slights where there are none." My mother would say when I cried because they forgot my birthday. I closed the browser. I needed to work. I needed to focus, but my body betrayed me. By mid-afternoon, I had a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. By the time I got home, my chest felt tight, as if an invisible belt was being cinched around my lungs. I paced my apartment, checking the locks on the windows, checking the deadbolt on the front door. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the foghorns in the harbor. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in the gymnasium at Briar Glen State University. I was 22 years old. wearing a polyester gown that smelled of plastic. I was scanning the bleachers. Section C, row 12. I had sent them the tickets 3 months in advance. I had drawn a map. I had called them the night before. "We will be there. Don't be dramatic today." That was the text my mother had sent. I remembered the announcer calling my name. Sadie Elizabeth Long. I remembered walking across the stage. The dean handing me the diploma cover. I remembered looking up, smiling, waiting to see my father's camera flash, waiting to see my mother waving. Section C. Row 12 was empty, 3 gray metal seats, vacant in a sea of people. I had waited in the parking lot for 2 hours after the ceremony. I sat on the curb, clutching my diploma, watching other families take photos, watching fathers hug their daughters, watching mothers adjust tassels. When I finally called home, my mother answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was light, casual. She was in the kitchen. I could hear the television in the background. "Oh, Sadie," she had said, sounding baffled. "I thought you said it was next Saturday. We have it written down for the 14th. It is the 7th. Mom, I sent you the tickets. The date is on the tickets." "Well, there is no need to take that tone," she had snapped. "We must have looked at it wrong. It is just a ceremony. Sadie, it is not the end of the world. Why do you always have to make us feel guilty for honest mistakes?" I rolled over in bed, burying my face in the pillow. That was the day I realized I was not just unloved, I was being toyed with. The next morning, the email arrived. I was at my desk, trying to draft a newsletter. When the notification slid onto my screen, it was from an address I did not recognize. Truthseeker8892@genericmail.com. The subject line was blank. I almost deleted it. I got spam all the time. But my finger hovered over the mouse. Something about the blank subject line felt deliberate. I clicked it open. There was no body text, just a single line, typed in default font. They didn't forget. I watched them plan it. My breath hitched. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I grabbed the edge of my desk to steady myself. Attached to the email was a grainy photograph. I clicked on it, my hand shaking so hard I could barely control the cursor. The image filled the screen. It was a picture of a wall calendar, one of those free ones you get from the bank, with landscapes for each month. The page was turned to May 2014. The 7th, the day of my graduation, was circled in thick red marker, in the margin. In handwriting that made my blood run cold, were 3 words: "No show, S." I stared at the S. The top curve was slightly flattened, the bottom curve sweeping and aggressive. It was my mother's handwriting. I had seen that S on grocery lists, on permission slips, on the checks she wrote to the church. No show. Not graduation. Not Sadie's ceremony. No show. It was a command, a strategy. I hit the delete key. The email vanished. I sat there, breathing hard, my heart slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. It is a scam, I told myself. It is a Photoshop job. Someone saw the viral video, did some digging, found out where I went to college, and is trying to mess with me. People are sick. The internet is full of sick people. But the handwriting, I went to my trash folder. I restored the email. I printed it. I needed to hold it. I needed to feel the paper, to prove that it was real. I walked to the communal printer, looking over my shoulder, terrified that someone would see. I grabbed the page the second it slid out of the tray. Back at my desk, I stared at the photo. The background of the picture showed a sliver of a kitchen counter, a speckled beige laminate with a burn mark near the edge. I knew that counter. I had scrubbed that counter every Saturday morning for 8 years. It was the counter in my childhood home in Briar Glen, Ohio. The nausea hit me in a wave. I put the paper in my purse, buried it deep under my wallet and keys, and went to the bathroom to dry heave over the toilet. They had planned it. For 12 years. I had carried the shame of being forgettable. I had told myself that I simply wasn't important enough to remember. That was painful. Yes, but it was a passive kind of pain. It was just gravity. This was different. This was active. This was malice. They had looked at the calendar. They had circled the date, and they had written down a deliberate instruction to stay away. Why? I went back to my desk, pale and shaky. I tried to work, but the words swam on the screen. 2 hours later, a second email arrived from the same address. Do not contact them. It read, if you ask them, they will spin it. They are good at spinning it. And then, a second paragraph. You graduated from Briar Glen State. The ceremony was in the field house. Remember the north entrance door? The one with the broken handle that jammed every third pull? You had to shoulder it open. I froze. The north entrance of the field house. It was a heavy steel door, painted a peeling gray. The latch stuck. If you didn't hit it with your hip at exactly the right angle, it wouldn't budge. We used to joke about it between classes. Don't get trapped by the north door. That detail was not on the internet. That detail was not in a public record. You had to have been there. You had to have walked those halls. This person was real, and they were in Briar Glen. Sadie? I jumped, minimizing the browser window instantly. Leah was standing at the entrance to my cubicle, holding 2 cups of coffee. She looked concerned. You look like you have seen a ghost, she said, setting a cup down on my desk. You have been staring at a blank Word document for 45 minutes. I am fine, I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy. Just a migraine. Leah pulled up a chair and sat down. She did not buy it. Leah was a social worker before she got into management. She could smell a crisis from 3 rooms away. Is this about the video? She asked gently. Sadie, if the interview is stressing you out, we can cancel it. I will tell the director you are sick. I will tell her you have laryngitis. It is not the interview, I said. Then what is it? She leaned in. You were shaking yesterday. You are shaking now. And that speech, Sadie, that came from somewhere real. The people who were supposed to clap for you, who was that about? I looked at Leah. She was kind. She was safe. She knew I had issues with my family, but she thought it was just standard distance, a difference of politics or lifestyle. I had never told her the specifics. I had never told anyone, but the paper in my purse felt like it was burning a hole through the leather. My family did not come to my college graduation, I whispered. Leah's face softened. Oh, Sadie, I am so sorry. No, I said, and the word came out hard. You don't understand. They didn't just miss it. I told them the date. I sent them tickets. And when they didn't show up, they told me I had lied to them. They told me I had given them the wrong day on purpose to make them look bad. For years, I believed that maybe I had messed up. Maybe I had written it down wrong. I looked at the computer screen, where the minimized email was waiting. But I didn't, I said. They knew? Leah was silent for a moment. How do you know that? I just know, I said. I could not show her the email. Not yet. It felt too dangerous, too insane. Leah, I think they did it on purpose, to teach me a lesson, to make me feel small. Leah reached out and covered my hand with hers. Her grip was warm and firm. That is emotional abuse. Sadie, that is gaslighting. I know, I said, and the tears I had been holding back pricked at my eyes. I think I need to go home. Go, she said. I will cover for you. Take the rest of the week if you need it. I drove home in a daze. Marrow Bay looked different through the windshield, sharp and threatening. The safety I had cultivated felt like an illusion. When I got to my apartment building, I checked the mail out of habit, mostly bills and flyers, but there was one envelope that stood out. It was a standard business envelope, white and crisp. The return address was in the top left corner, printed in stark black ink, Briar Glen. Family Court Services, Briar Glen. Oh, my heart stopped. I had not lived in Briar Glen for 10 years. I had no parking tickets there. I had no property there. I had no children there. And the letter was addressed to Sadie Long, not Sadie Miller. My birth name, Sadie Long. I had legally changed my name in a courthouse in Kentucky 3 months after I left Ohio. I had sealed the records. I had moved states twice. There was no public link between Sadie Miller of Briar Glen and Sadie Long of Marrow Bay. Someone had connected the dots. I stood in the lobby, the envelope trembling in my hand. I ripped it open. It was a single sheet of paper. R.E. Records Verification Request. Dear Ms. Long, this letter serves as notification that a request has been filed to verify familial relationships for the purpose of updating vital statistics records in Briar Glen County. Please confirm your current address and contact information to ensure accuracy in the county archives. It looked official. It had a seal. It had a reference number. But I knew what it was. It was not a summons. It was a poke. It was a way of saying, we know where you are. We know who you are calling yourself now. Records verification was nonsense. You don't verify records for someone who hasn't lived in the county for a decade unless someone is looking for them. I looked at the date on the letter. It was postmarked 2 days ago. The day before the video went viral. This wasn't about the speech. This had started before the speech. The walls of the lobby seemed to close in. I felt the trap snapping shut around my ankle. I had thought I was free. I had thought I was invisible. But all this time, while I was building my safe little life, someone in Briar Glen had been watching, waiting, and keeping score. I walked up the stairs to my apartment, locking the door behind me. I went to the window and looked down at the street. A gray sedan was parked across the road. It was probably nothing. It was probably a neighbor. But for the first time in 10 years, I felt the old fear, the specific, suffocating dread of being a child in a house where the rules changed every day. I pulled the photo of the calendar out of my purse and laid it next to the letter from the court. No show, S. Dear Ms. Long, they were coming for me. Or perhaps I was being summoned back to them. I sat on the floor, hugging my knees to my chest, and stared at the phone. I had to reply to the email. I had to know who the sender was. Because if my family was hunting me, I needed a weapon, and right now, the truth was the only weapon I had left. I opened my laptop, created a new, encrypted email address, and typed a reply to TruthSeeker8892. Who are you? I hit send, and I waited for the ghosts of Briar Glen to answer. The response from the encrypted account came 40 minutes after I sent my question. It did not answer who they were. It only gave me a command. If you want the rest of the file, you have to come get it. Renfield Public Library, Thursday at 1 p.m. Do not tell anyone you are coming. If they know you are here, they will get ahead of you. I sat in my apartment in Marrow Bay, the blue light of the screen illuminating the coffee cup I had been gripping for an hour. My first instinct was to slam the laptop shut and never open it again. This felt like a trap. It felt like the beginning of a bad horror movie, where the protagonist walks willingly into the dark basement. But I looked at the printed photo of the calendar again. No show. The handwriting was my mother's. The intent was undeniable, and the letter from the court, the records verification request, was sitting right next to it. They were already poking at the perimeter of my life. If I stayed in Marrow Bay, I would just be waiting for the next blow. If I went to Briar Glen, at least I would be moving toward the threat. I requested a week of personal leave from Juniper and Slate the next morning. I told Leah I had a family emergency, which was technically true, though not in the way she understood it. I packed a bag with enough clothes for 4 days. I packed my laptop. I packed the court letter and the calendar photo, and then, before I zipped the bag, I packed a small voice recorder I used for client interviews. I did not know if I would use it, but the urge to document was rising in me like a fever. The drive from the coast to Ohio took 11 hours. I drove in silence for the first 4, letting the landscape flatten out, watching the trees change from scrubby coastal pine to the heavy, broad-leafed oaks of the Midwest. As I crossed the state line, the air changed. It became heavier, humid and thick with the smell of wet earth and fertilizer. My stomach turned over. I pulled off the highway about 20 miles outside of Briar Glen, into the cracked asphalt lot of a rest stop that had not been renovated since the 90s. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I needed a rule. I needed a mantra to keep me from reverting to the 22-year-old girl who begged for scraps of affection. "I am not here to be loved," I said aloud to the empty car. My voice sounded small, so I said it again, louder. "I am not here to be loved. I am here to understand." I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked different than I had 10 years ago. My hair was shorter, sharper. I wore expensive glasses. My clothes were tailored. I did not look like Sadie Miller, the girl who wore oversized sweaters to hide herself. I looked like Sadie Long, a woman who managed budgets and commanded rooms. I put the car in gear and finished the drive. I chose a motel on the far edge of town, the Briar Glen Motor Inn. It was a low, L-shaped building with brown doors and a neon sign that buzzed with a dying electrical hum. I decided to check in under my birth name, Sadie Miller. It was a risk, but a calculated one. If I used Sadie Long, and the Faith and Family Council was tracking that name through court records, it might trigger an alert I couldn't see. Sadie Miller was a common name. There were probably 3 other Sadie Millers in the county. I was banking on being just another ghost from the past, forgotten and irrelevant. I walked into the lobby. It smelled of stale coffee and lemon floor cleaner. The woman behind the desk was in her 50s, wearing a pink cardigan and reading a paperback novel. She looked up as the door chimed. "Help you?" she asked, marking her page. "Checking in," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Reservation for Miller." She tapped at her keyboard. "Sadie Miller?" "Yes." She stopped typing. She looked up at me, and her eyes narrowed slightly behind her wire-rimmed glasses. Then, a smile spread across her face. It was not a welcoming smile. It was bright, too wide, and it did not reach her eyes. It was the smile of someone who has just collected a piece of gossip they cannot wait to trade. "Well now," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "It has been a long time, hasn't it, hun? We heard you went out west." My blood ran cold. I had been gone for a decade. I had never met this woman in my life. "I live in Marrow Bay," I said, keeping my expression stony. "Just passing through." "Marrow Bay," she repeated, as if tasting the words. "That is fancy. Your mother mentioned you were doing communications? Something with computers?" My mother had been talking about me. My mother knew where I was, what I did, and apparently, she was discussing it with motel clerks on the edge of town. "I am just here to sleep," I said, sliding my credit card across the counter. "Room key, please." She swiped the card, her eyes never leaving my face. "Room 112, around the back. You have a blessed stay now. Sadie." I took the key and walked out, my heart hammering against my ribs. They will get ahead of you. The email had warned me. I was in town for 5 minutes, and already, I felt the net tightening. I barely slept. I lay on the stiff mattress, listening to the sound of trucks downshifting on the highway. I kept the chair wedged under the doorknob. The next afternoon, I drove to the Renfield Public Library. It was a beautiful old stone building in the center of town. One of the few places in Briar Glen I had actually liked growing up. It was neutral ground. I walked into the stacks, the smell of old paper and dust acting as a temporary sedative. I went to the reference section in the back, near the microfiche machines. Just as the email had instructed, a woman was sitting at a round wooden table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She looked to be about 45, with tired eyes and hair pulled back in a severe bun. She was wearing a beige cardigan that looked like it had been washed 100 times. I approached the table. "Truth seeker?" I asked softly. The woman jumped. She looked around the library, checking the sightlines, before nodding. "Sit down," she hissed. "Keep your voice down." I sat. "Who are you?" "My name is June Halstead," she said. She did not offer her hand. "I used to work in the administration office at the university. I was the scheduler for the humanities department." I studied her face. I had a vague memory of her, a woman behind a glass partition, always typing, always looking stressed. "Why did you contact me, June?" "Because of the video," she said. She was twisting a silver ring on her finger. Round and round. I saw it on Facebook. Someone from the church shared it to make fun of it. They were saying, "Look at the prodigal daughter trying to be a victim, but I heard what you said about the hands in the lap." She looked up at me, and her eyes were wet. "I was there, Sadie, in the office, the day your mother came in." I felt the air leave the room. "Tell me." June took a breath, looking over my shoulder again. "It was March, 2 months before graduation. Your mother, Colleen, came in. Your sister Aubrey was with her, and there was a man with them, Mr. Karras, from the church board." "Deacon Karras," I said. I remembered him. He was a man who smiled with his teeth and always smelled of peppermint and judgment. "They told me they were there to confirm the time of your ceremony," June said. "I pulled up the master schedule. I told them, clearly. Sadie walks at 2 o'clock on Saturday the 7th. I showed them the screen." She reached into her large tote bag and pulled out a manila folder. Her hands were shaking. "Your mother took a piece of paper from the counter." June continued. "She wrote down, Saturday the 14th. I saw her do it. I said, 'Mrs. Long, that is the wrong date. It is the 7th. And she looked at me. She looked right through me and said, 'Sadie has been confused lately. We are handling it. It is a family matter.'" "A family matter," I repeated. The phrase was a weapon I knew well. "Mr. Karras leaned over the counter," June said, her voice trembling. "He told me that spiritual discipline sometimes looks like confusion to the outside world. He told me that if I wanted to keep my position, I should respect the privacy of a family trying to save a wayward child." "Save me?" I whispered. "Save me from what? I was an English major with a 3.8 GPA. I worked at the bookstore. I went to church every Sunday." "Save you from pride," June said. "That was the word they used. Pride." She slid the folder across the table. "I kept a copy," she said. "I don't know why. Maybe because I knew it was wrong. Maybe because I have a daughter." I opened the folder. Inside was a printed email thread, dated 12 years ago. The subject line was, "Sadie's Ceremony Confusion." The top email was from Deacon Karras to the Dean of Students. "Dear Dean Morris, regarding the Long family attendance, please ensure no special seating is reserved. The family is engaging in a period of tough love to correct some behavioral issues regarding Sadie's entitlement. If she asks, please direct her to the standard protocol. We appreciate the university's discretion in supporting the Faith and Family Council's guidance on this." There it was, in black and white. Entitlement. Tough love. Faith and Family Council. I felt a surge of rage so hot it blurred my vision. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I am going to kill them," I said. It was not a figure of speech. In that moment, I wanted to drive to the house on Elm Street and burn it to the ground. "I am going to take this to my father and shove it down his throat." "Sit down," June hissed, reaching across the table to grab my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Sadie, sit down. If you go there now, you lose." "I have proof," I snapped, shaking her off. "They lied. They gaslit me for a decade. And they will say you forged it," June said. "They will say I am a disgruntled employee who was fired for incompetence, which is what they made sure happened 2 years after you left. They will say you are unstable. Look at you. Sadie, you are shaking. You are shouting in a library. If you walk into that house right now, they will call the police, and they will tell everyone that their mentally ill daughter has returned to harass them, and everyone in this town will believe them." I froze. She was right. "The people who make you small don't look like villains," June said softly. "They look like concerned parents. They look like pillars of the community. They have had 12 years to tell their version of the story. You have been gone." I sank back into the chair. "So what do I do?" "You get more," June said. This email is just the start. They didn't just erase your graduation. Sadie, they erased you. They scrubbed you from the church records. They influenced your job applications in town. Why do you think you never got that internship at the mayor's office? I stared at her. I didn't get it because they hired someone with more experience. June shook her head. You didn't get it because your father played golf with the mayor and mentioned he was worried about your work ethic and emotional volatility. I felt sick. My entire early adulthood, the rejections, the confusion, the feeling that I was constantly running into invisible walls, it hadn't been bad luck, it had been sabotage. Gather the records, June whispered, quietly. Build a wall of paper so high they cannot climb over it. Then you speak. Not before. She stood up, pulling her bag onto her shoulder. I have to go. If they see me with you, I lose my pension. Be careful. Sadie, the council is stronger than it was when you left. They own half the town council now. She walked away, vanishing into the stacks, leaving me with the folder that proved my life had been a lie. I sat there for 20 minutes, forcing my breathing to slow down. In, out, in, out. I was not a victim. I was a communications manager. I knew how to handle a crisis. I just had to treat my own life like a client file. I left the library and drove to the university campus. It was summer session, so the grounds were mostly empty. The brick buildings looked the same. Sturdy, imposing, indifferent. I went to the registrar's office. I needed to see my student file. I wanted to see if the behavioral issues Deacon Karras mentioned had been officially recorded. The clerk at the window was a young guy, maybe 25, wearing a polo shirt with the university logo. I need to request a copy of my full student transcript and any disciplinary records, I said, handing him my driver's license. Name is Sadie Long, formerly Sadie Miller. He took the license, typed into his computer, and frowned. 1 second, he said. He went to a back office. I stood there, tapping my fingers on the counter, feeling the sweat trickle down my back. 5 minutes passed. When he returned, he looked uncomfortable. He handed me my license back, but he didn't look me in the eye. I can print the transcript, he said, but the disciplinary file, it is currently checked out. Checked out? I asked. I am the student. Who checked it out? It is marked as administrative review, he said, reciting the words like a script. Access is restricted to authorized community partners. What community partner? I demanded. He lowered his voice, glancing at the other clerks. The system says external audit, Faith and Family Council liaison. It was accessed yesterday morning. Yesterday morning, the day after the video went viral. Can I see who authorized it? I can't give you that information, he said. Look, miss, I just work here. But if I were you, I would leave it alone. The note on the file says, pending litigation prep. Litigation? They were preparing to sue me? Or preparing a defense in case I sued them? I took the transcript he offered and walked out. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the quad. They were scrubbing the history. They were rewriting the past before I could even read it. I got back in my car. I knew I should go back to the motel. I knew I should hide. But a morbid gravity pulled me toward Elm Street. I drove slowly. The town looked the same, yet sharper, more menacing. The trees were too green. The fences were too white. I turned onto the street where I grew up. The house was number 404. I stopped the car 3 houses down, keeping the engine running. It looked perfect. The siding was a fresh, creamy yellow. The lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life. The flower beds were exploding with hydrangeas, blue and purple, heads heavy with blooms. It looked like a postcard of the American dream. In the driveway sat a brand new SUV. It was a dark blue behemoth, polished to a mirror shine. On the back window, in the bottom right corner, was a white decal. It was a stylized cross wrapped in a laurel wreath, the logo of the Briar Glen Faith and Family Council. It was a brand. My parents weren't just members. They were stamped with it. The organization that had helped them gaslight their daughter was now parked in their driveway, a symbol of their status. I watched the house for a long time. I saw the front curtain twitch. I saw a shadow move behind the glass. Was it my mother? Was she watching the street, waiting for the daughter she had erased to come back and beg for forgiveness? I put the car in drive and sped away. I could not be near that house. It felt radioactive. Back at the motel, I locked the door and pulled the curtains tight. I opened a bottle of wine I had bought at a gas station and poured it into a plastic cup. I needed to numb the edges of my mind. I opened my laptop. I had June's email. I had the transcript. But I needed to know what they were saying. I needed to know the narrative. I created a fake Facebook profile. Jane Smith, no photo, no friends. I searched for Aubrey Long. My sister's profile was public. Of course it was. Aubrey had always lived her life on a stage. Her cover photo was a picture of the whole family. Colleen, Graham, Aubrey, and Evan, standing on the beach. They were all wearing matching white linen shirts. They looked happy. They looked complete. There was no gap where I should have been. I scrolled back, years back. It took me an hour to get to 2014. May 7th, 2014, my graduation day. There was a post. So proud of this family. The caption read, "Celebrating a huge milestone weekend with the people who matter most. God is good." Attached were 3 photos. One showed my mother laughing, holding a glass of iced tea. One showed my father grilling steaks on the back patio. One showed a cake, a large white sheet cake with blue frosting roses. It wasn't a graduation cake. It said, "Blessings on the journey." They had thrown a party. On the day I was sitting on a curb in a cap and gown, crying into a cell phone. They were in the backyard, eating steak and cake. They hadn't forgotten the date. They hadn't mixed it up. They had used the day to celebrate their own righteousness. They were celebrating the fact that they were handling me. The party wasn't despite my absence. It was because of it. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It was so petty, so small, and yet so absolutely devastating. I took a screenshot. I saved it to a folder labeled Evidence. Then, I opened a new document. I began to type a list. 1. The calendar. Photo. 2. The email thread. June. 3. The court letter. 4. The transcript access log. 5. The Facebook post. It was a skeleton of a case. It wasn't enough to win, but it was enough to start a war. I took a sip of the cheap wine. It tasted like vinegar. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to play games with records? Let's play." I closed the laptop. Tomorrow, I would find my father, and I would let him see me. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I would just let him see that the ghost had returned, and she was not haunting them. She was hunting them. The Hearthway Diner sat on the corner of Main and 2nd, a chrome and neon relic that smelled of burnt coffee and bacon grease. It was the kind of place where the menu had not changed in 30 years, and neither had the clientele. I arrived 10 minutes early. I needed to secure a booth in the back. Facing the door, I needed to see him coming before he saw me. I ordered a black coffee and watched the steam curl up from the mug. My hands were resting flat on the formica table. Still, I had spent the morning practicing this stillness in the motel mirror. Do not fidget. Do not apologize. Do not smile unless it is strategic. When Graham Long walked through the door, the air in the diner seemed to shift. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with silver hair that was always perfectly coiffed. He wore a windbreaker that looked expensive and pressed khakis. He looked like exactly what he was, a pillar of the community, a man who sat on boards and organized fundraisers. He scanned the room. When his eyes landed on me, his face transformed. It was a performance I had watched 1,000 times. The neutral expression melted instantly into a beam of paternal warmth. He raised a hand, waved enthusiastically, and strode toward me, making sure everyone in the booths we passed saw him. "See," his walk said. "See how I greet the prodigal daughter. See how forgiving I am." I stood up. He pulled me into a hug that was tight, brief, and smelled of Old Spice and mints. It was the smell of Sunday mornings. It made my stomach turn. "Sadie," he said, pulling back and holding me at arm's length. He spoke loudly enough for the waitress 3 tables away to hear. "It is so good to see you. Your mother said you were passing through. We didn't even know you were in the state." "It was a last-minute trip," I said, my voice steady. "I had some leave to burn." We sat. He flagged down the waitress with a charming smile and ordered a slice of cherry pie. He did not ask if I wanted anything. "So," he said, clasping his hands on the table. "Marrow Bay, how is that going? Are you still working for that charity?" "It is a non-profit. Dad, Juniper and Slate. I am the communications manager." Right, he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Communications. That is good. It is good you found something manageable. Your mother and I were worried the city might be too much for you. You know how you get when there is too much noise." He was doing it already, rewriting reality. I had lived in a city for 10 years. I managed a department. I handled crisis PR. But to him, I was still the fragile girl who needed to be protected from the world. "I love the city," I said. "I am happy there." He smiled, a tight, patronizing curve of his lips. "Well, happiness is a relative term, isn't it? We all go through phases. I remember when your sister thought she was going to be a painter. We just have to let these things run their course." I took a sip of coffee to hide the clench of my jaw. He was calling my entire adult life a phase. He was framing my career, my independence, my home, as a whimsical detour I would eventually abandon when I came to my senses. "It is not a phase," I said. "It is my life." "Of course," he said soothingly, as if calming a toddler. "Of course it is. We just want you to know that when you are done chasing, whatever this is, the door is open. We can always find a place for you here. Maybe something at the library, something quiet. Chasing attention." That was the subtext. He was echoing the words from my childhood. "Sadie is just doing this for attention." I decided to test the perimeter. I needed to see if the cracks I had found were visible to him. "I actually had a bit of a moment at work recently," I said, keeping my eyes on his face. "A video of me speaking at an event went viral. A few million views. It was strange." Graham froze. His hand, halfway to his mouth with a fork full of pie, stopped in midair. For a split second, the mask slipped. His eyes went hard, cold, and assessing. It wasn't confusion. It was calculation. He set the fork down slowly. "Yes," he said. His voice was no longer the booming, jovial tone he had used for the audience. It was low and flat. "Your mother told me. She said you have been performing again." Performing. The word hung in the air between us like a threat. He didn't say speaking. He didn't say advocating. He said performing. "I wasn't performing," I said. "I was helping a student who was being heckled." "You were making a scene," Graham said. "You always did have a flair for the dramatic. Sadie, taking the microphone, making it about you. It is exactly like that time you insisted on wearing that red dress to Easter service. You just have to be the center of the room." "I was defending someone," I said. "I spoke about support, about family." He stiffened. He looked around the diner, checking to see if anyone was listening, then leaned in closer. "We saw the clip," he said. "Your mother was very distressed. She thinks you look unwell. Your eyes? You look manic. Sadie, we are worried that you are spiraling again, just like senior year." Senior year. The year I worked 3 jobs to pay for the tuition they refused to cover. The year I barely slept because I was terrified of failing. They called that spiraling. I called it survival. "I am not spiraling," I said. "I am the most stable I have ever been." "If you say so," he said. Picking up his fork again, he had recovered his script. "But people are talking. Sadie. They see that video and they wonder why a grown woman needs to cry for validation from strangers. It reflects poorly on the family. We have a reputation to maintain, especially with the council's new initiative. The Integrity Campaign, I said. He blinked. You know about that? I read the newsletter, I lied. It is important work, he said, puffing up slightly. Restoring moral fiber to the community. We can't have distractions. He finished his pie in 3 bites. He wiped his mouth with the napkin, crumpled it into a ball, and dropped it on the plate. It was nice to see you, Sadie, he said, signaling that the audience was over. But don't stay in town too long. You know how you get when you dwell on the past. It is not healthy. Go back to your bay. Let us handle things here. He stood up, dropped a $20 bill on the table, and walked out without looking back. I sat there for another 20 minutes, shaking. He was terrified. I could see it in the tightness of his jaw, in the way he had shut down the conversation about the video. He wasn't worried about my mental health. He was worried about his control. Performing was his code word for telling the truth. I left the diner and walked 2 blocks to the Briar Glen Credit Cooperative. It was a small, local bank where I had opened my first student checking account when I was 18. My parents had been co-signers because I had no credit history. I needed to follow the money. Evan had mentioned financial dependency. I needed to know exactly when and how they had cut me off. The bank was cool and quiet. The teller was a woman I didn't recognize. Young, with bright acrylic nails. Hi, I said, approaching the window. I am trying to track down records for an old account. It would have been closed around 2014 or 2015. Name is Sadie Long, or Sadie Miller, she typed on her keyboard, chewing gum rhythmically. Date of birth? I gave it to her. Okay, I see a profile for Sadie Miller, she said, but no active accounts. I know, I said. I want to know when the student checking account was closed. She clicked a few times. Looks like June 3rd, 2014. June 3rd, 3 weeks after graduation. And who closed it? I asked. It was a co-signer request, she said. Graham Long, reason listed as family restructure. Family restructure. It sounded corporate. It sounded like a layoff. Is there anything else? I asked. Any notes on the file? She squinted at the screen. That is weird. What? There is a pop-up note, she said. Usually these are for fraud alerts, but this just says, client requested no direct contact with Sadie regarding account closure. Statements to be routed to P.O. Box 442. My stomach dropped. P.O. Box 442 was the Faith and Family Council's mailing address. I knew it because I had seen it on the bumper stickers. So I was never notified? I asked. It looks like the final statement went to the P.O. box, she said. Did you not get your balance check? There was about $400 in there. No, I said quietly. I never got it. They had stolen my money. $400. To them, it was nothing. To me, at 22, it was rent. It was food. They had closed the account, taken the money, and routed the notification to the church so I wouldn't even know it was happening until my card was declined. Thank you, I said. Can you print that screen for me? I am not supposed to, she said. Please, I said. I just need the date. She looked at my face, saw something there. Desperation, maybe, and nodded. The printer whirred. She slid the paper across the counter. I walked out into the blinding sunlight. Family restructure. That was what they called erasing a daughter. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Leah. Sadie, she said, her voice tight. Where are you? I am in Ohio, I said. I told you. I know, but are you safe? Why? I have been doing some digging, Leah said. You know how you said your family is involved with that Faith and Family Council? Yes. I looked up our donor list for the fall gala, Leah said. One of our platinum sponsors is the Keene Foundation, Hollis Keene. I know Hollis, I said. He is a nice guy. He runs a logistics company in Seattle. His wife is Martha Keene, Leah said. She is from Ohio, Sadie. She is the treasurer of the Briar Glen Faith and Family Council. I found her bio on their website. It lists her husband's philanthropy as a partner ministry. I stopped walking. The sidewalk seemed to tilt. What does that mean? It means your nonprofit world isn't as far away from them as you think, Leah said. If this video blows up, and if you start making noise about your family, Hollis Keene is going to get a call from his wife. And Hollis Keene funds 20% of our scholarship budget. I leaned against a brick wall, trying to breathe. They are everywhere. They are networked, Leah corrected. Wealthy, religious networks are tight. Sadie, they talk. If you go to war with them, they can hurt Juniper and Slate. They can hurt your job. So I should just shut up? No, Leah said fiercely. You just need to know the landscape. You are not just fighting your parents. You are fighting an ecosystem. Be careful. I hung up. The warning echoed in my head. An ecosystem. I had one more meeting. I drove to Founders Park, a sprawling green space on the north side of town. I had texted Evan from the burner email, asking him to meet me near the duck pond. I told him to come alone. I waited on a bench obscured by a weeping willow. I watched the path. Evan appeared 10 minutes late. He looked older than I remembered, obviously, but he also looked tired. He was 29 now. He wore a suit that was slightly too big for him, and he kept looking over his shoulder. When he saw me, he didn't smile. He looked relieved, and then terrified. Sadie, he breathed, sitting down next to me but leaving a foot of space between us. Jesus, you are actually here. Hi, Evan. Mom is freaking out, he said. She knows you are in town. She says you are stalking them. I am not stalking anyone, I said. I am visiting. It is a free country. Evan rubbed his face with his hands. They are circling the wagons. Sadie, Dad called the lawyer this morning. They are talking about a restraining order. On what grounds? Harassment? Emotional distress. They have the text messages you sent when you left. The angry ones. I was 22 and they had just stolen my money, I said. I had a right to be angry. Evan looked at the ground. I know. Do you? I asked. You were there, Evan. You were at the graduation party. You ate the cake. He flinched. I was 17. Sadie. What was I supposed to do? You could have called me, I said. You could have told me they weren't coming. I couldn't, he whispered. They took my phone. Dad said it was a test. He said if you really loved us, you would understand that we couldn't support your rebellion. He said if I called you, I was participating in your sin. My sin, I said flatly. My sin of getting a degree they didn't pay for. It wasn't about the degree, Evan said, looking up at me. His eyes were red. It was about control. It was always about control. He took a deep breath. I suspected, he said. That day, Mom was too calm. She was humming in the kitchen while she frosted that cake. Who frosts a cake when they think they have the wrong day? She knew. Sadie, she knew exactly what she was doing. Why didn't you say anything later? Because I was scared, he admitted. I saw what they did to you. The silence, the exclusion. I didn't want to be next. I needed them to pay for my college. I needed a car. I sold you out for tuition. Sadie, I am sorry. I looked at my brother. He was weak. Yes, but he was also a victim. He had learned that love was a transaction. Tell me about the silent punishments, I said. Evan nodded. It is their favorite move. You know that. It wasn't just the graduation. Remember your 16th birthday? When they forgot to pick you up from band practice until 10 at night? They said the car broke down, I said. The car didn't break down, Evan said. They were watching a movie. I asked Mom if we should go get you, and she said, Sadie needs time to think about her tone at breakfast. They left you there for 4 hours in the rain. Sadie, to teach you a lesson. My memory shifted. I remembered that night. I remembered standing under the awning of the band hall, shivering, calling their phone over and over. I remembered the apology they gave me later. how they made me comfort them for how stressful the car trouble was. "And the time they missed your play?" Evan asked. "And the time they lost your application for the summer camp?" "Plausible deniability," I said. "Exactly," Evan said. "They never hit us. They never screamed. They just failed to show up. And then they made us feel crazy for expecting them to. It makes the target doubt themselves. It makes you think you are demanding too much." "It is psychological warfare," I said. "It is working," Evan said. "Sadie, you have to leave. They are not going to apologize. They are going to destroy you. Aubrey is already telling people you are on drugs. She is telling people you had a breakdown in Marrow Bay and got fired." "I didn't get fired." "It doesn't matter what is true," Evan said. "It matters what people believe, and people here believe them. They want to believe them. Because if the Longs are monsters, then maybe their own families are too." He stood up. "I have to go. If they find out I talked to you, they will cut me off. I'm trying to buy a house, Sadie. I can't lose their help right now." "I understand," I said, and I did. He was still in the cage. "Be careful," he said. "Dad isn't just mad. He is humiliated, and that makes him dangerous." Evan walked away, disappearing into the trees. I sat on the bench for a long time. The pattern was clear now. It wasn't an isolated incident. It was a lifestyle. Silent punishments. I pulled out my phone. I needed to see it. I needed to see the mechanism. I logged into my old email account, the one from college that I hadn't used in years. It took me 3 tries to guess the password. I searched for emails from my mother, Colleen Long. There were hundreds. Most of them were short, passive-aggressive notes about holidays or grades. I scrolled to May 2014, May 7th. The morning of graduation, there was one email, sent at 8:02 a.m. Subject: "Today we will be there. Don't be dramatic today. Just get your diploma and meet us in the lot. We don't need a production. Don't be dramatic." I stared at the words. I remembered reading that email in my dorm room. I remembered how it felt like a cold hand around my throat. I had been so excited. I had wanted to run to my friends and scream. I did it. But that email had silenced me. It had made me shrink. It had made me walk across the stage with my head down, trying to be invisible, trying not to be a production. They had set the stage before they even arrived. Or rather, before they didn't arrive. They had preemptively shamed me for my own accomplishment, so that when they didn't show up, I would already feel like I was the problem. Don't be dramatic. I took a screenshot. I drove back to the motel as the sun went down. The neon sign was buzzing louder now. I walked into my room and threw my keys on the bed. My head was pounding. The phone on the nightstand rang. I stared at it. Nobody knew I was in this room. I hadn't given the number to anyone. I picked it up. "Hello? Ms. Long?" A woman's voice, brisk, professional. "This is Carla Evans from the Briar Glen Sentinel. We heard you were back in town." My blood ran cold. "How did you get this number?" "Small towns talk. Ms. Long," she said, her tone suggesting this was obvious. "We are running a piece on the local response to your viral video. We have a statement from the Faith and Family Council expressing concern and prayers for your well-being. We wanted to give you a chance to comment on your surprise hometown visit. Are you here to reconcile?" "I have no comment," I said. "Do not call me again." "Are you staying long?" she pressed. "We heard there was an incident at the diner with your father. Witnesses say it looked tense." Witnesses. The waitress. The couple in the corner. Everyone was watching. "No comment," I said, and slammed the phone down. I unplugged the cord from the wall. I was shaking. There was no privacy here. The motel clerk had told someone. Maybe she told the reporter directly. Maybe she told her sister who told the reporter. It didn't matter. The network was active. My cell phone chimed. I looked at the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. Local area code. I opened it. It was a photo. The photo was taken from the hallway of the motel. It showed the door to room 112. My door. The number was clearly visible. The angle suggested the person was standing right outside, perhaps leaning against the opposite wall. Below the photo was a message. "You left once. Don't make it messy this time." I dropped the phone on the bed as if it were hot. I ran to the door and checked the lock. It was engaged. I checked the chain. It was on. I peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Just the dirty beige carpet and the flickering fluorescent light. But someone had been there. Moments ago. They weren't just watching anymore. They were hunting. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a fist. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." I wasn't leaving. They wanted me to run. That was the point of the photo. Scare her off. Make her disappear. I grabbed the heavy chair from the desk and wedged it under the doorknob again. I went to my bag and pulled out the voice recorder. I sat on the edge of the bed, hit the red button, and began to speak. "My name is Sadie Long," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "If anything happens to me, check the following people: Graham Long, Colleen Long, Aubrey Long, and the Briar Glen Faith and Family Council." I took a deep breath. "I am not leaving," I said to the recorder. "I am not leaving until everyone knows what they did." I stopped the recording. I uploaded the file to a cloud server. I emailed it to Leah. Then I sat in the dark, watching the door, waiting for the ghost to try and break it down. I chose the Cedar Hollow Church offices for the meeting because I knew my mother performed best in spaces designed for quiet reverence. It was a tactical choice. In a diner, she could be loud. In her home, she could be commanding. But in the church, under the administrative gaze of the parish secretary and the silent judgment of the portraits of past pastors, she would be forced to maintain the facade of the grieving, benevolent matriarch. I arrived 15 minutes early. The office smelled of lemon polish and photocopier toner, a scent that always made me feel like I was waiting for detention. I wore a navy blazer and trousers, clothes that felt like armor. I sat in a high-backed chair in the waiting area, my hands folded in my lap, watching the dust motes dance in the shaft of light coming through the stained glass. Colleen Long arrived exactly on time. She swept into the room bringing a cloud of floral perfume with her. She looked impeccable. Her hair was a helmet of blonde highlights. Her cardigan was a soft, non-threatening beige, and her face was arranged in an expression of pained hopefulness. She stopped when she saw me, bringing a hand to her chest. "Sadie," she breathed. It was a whisper, theatrical and heavy. "Oh, look at you. You look tired. Honey." It was the first strike. Before we had even said hello, she had framed me as the broken one. "Hello, Mother," I said. Standing up, I did not move to hug her. I kept the chair between us. "Thank you for meeting me." "Of course," she said, her eyes glistening. She looked at the receptionist, a young woman who was watching us with rapt attention. "Let us go into the conference room, shall we? We have some healing to do." We walked into a small room with a mahogany table and a ticking clock on the wall. Colleen shut the door and turned to me, her face softening into a look of practiced empathy. "Your father told me he saw you," she said, pulling out a chair. "He said you seemed agitated. Sadie, we are so worried. This video, this sudden trip back, it feels like a cry for help." I sat down across from her. I placed my hands flat on the table. "It is not a cry for help," I said calmly. "It is an inquiry. I am here to ask you about graduation. May 7th, 2014. Colleen sighed, a long, tragic sound that seemed to deflate her entire posture. She shook her head, looking down at her manicured hands. "Oh, Sadie, are we still holding on to that? It was a mix-up, a terrible, unfortunate mix-up. Do you know how much we cried that day? When we realized we had the wrong date? We were devastated. We had a cake waiting. We had gifts." "I saw the cake," I said. "On Facebook. You ate it." She didn't blink. "We didn't want it to go to waste. We were trying to make the best of a sad situation. We were celebrating your achievement in spirit." "You were celebrating my absence," I corrected. That is your interpretation, she said gently, and I understand why you feel that way. When you are hurting, everything looks like a weapon. But Sadie, honey, you have to understand that families are messy. We make mistakes, but we don't keep score. Love doesn't keep score. She was quoting Corinthians. She was using the Bible to erase her malice. I reached into my bag and pulled out the photograph of the calendar. I slid it across the polished wood of the table. This isn't a score, I said. This is a plan. Colleen looked at the photo. She stared at the red circle. She stared at the words, "No show," S written in her own handwriting. For half a second, the mask slipped. Her eyes tightened at the corners. Her mouth formed a thin, hard line. It was a micro-expression of pure annoyance, the look of a chess player who realizes their opponent has made an unexpected move. Then, it was gone. She looked up at me, her face pitying. "Sadie," she said softly, "where did you get this?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters," she said, "because people forge things. Sadie, people do desperate things when they are jealous of family peace. Who gave you this? Was it someone who wants to hurt us? Someone who wants to drive a wedge between a mother and daughter?" "It is your handwriting," I said. Look at the curve of the N. "I can write 'no show' on a piece of paper right now," she said, dismissing the photo with a wave of her hand. "Whatever this is, it is not real. Or maybe I wrote it for something else. A dentist appointment, a canceled lunch. You are twisting things to fit a narrative where you are the victim. Sadie, you have always done that." "I didn't twist the north door," I said. "The email mentioned the north door of the field house, the one that jams. How would a stranger know that?" Colleen leaned forward. Her voice changed. It became lower, sharper. The warmth evaporated. "You know what I think?" she said. "I think you are looking for an excuse. You changed your name. Sadie, you rejected us. You threw away the name your father gave you, the name we prayed over. You did that to punish us." "I did it to survive," I said. "No," she snapped. "You did it to be cruel. You wanted to erase us. And now you come back here, waving these fake pictures, trying to make us look like monsters? That is toxic. Sadie, that is abusive behavior. You are violating our boundaries." I stared at her. She was using the language of therapy. Toxic, abusive, boundaries. Words she had likely learned from a daytime talk show or a church seminar, and she was weaponizing them against me. She was co-opting the vocabulary of healing to defend her abuse. "You skipped my graduation to teach me a lesson about humility," I said. "I have the email from Deacon Karras. I know about the Tough Love Initiative." Colleen stood up. She smoothed her skirt. "Deacon Karras is a good man," she said. "And yes, we prayed for guidance on how to help you. You were arrogant. Sadie, you were drifting away from God. We had to do something to bring you back to earth. But we never planned to miss the ceremony. That is a lie you are telling yourself to justify your abandonment of this family." She walked to the door and put her hand on the knob. "I think we are done here," she said. "I am going to pray for you. Sadie, I am going to pray that you find clarity. But do not come near your sister. She is very fragile right now, and your aggression is not good for her." She opened the door and walked out, leaving me alone in the silent conference room with the ticking clock. I sat there for 5 minutes, just breathing. She was good. She was terrifyingly good. She hadn't just denied it. She had inverted it. In her version of the story, I was the abuser. I was the one punishing them. I left the church and drove to the river. I needed air. I parked near the old boat ramp and walked down to the water's edge. A car pulled up next to mine. It was a rusty Honda Civic. June Halstead got out. She looked worse than she had at the library. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was wringing her hands. "I saw your car," she said, her voice shaking. "I followed you from the church." "June," I said, "what is wrong?" "They called me," she said. "This morning. The vice-chancellor of the university and someone from the council." "Who?" Keene, she said. Hollis Keene's wife, Martha. My stomach turned over. Leah had been right. The network was active. What did they want? They wanted me to sign a statement, June said, tears spilling over her cheeks. They had it already written. It said that the scheduling error in 2014 was my fault. It said that I had misinformed your mother about the time and that I had been suffering from personal issues that affected my memory. They want you to take the fall, I said. They told me that if I signed it, they would ensure my pension remained secure, June said. And if I didn't, they said they would open an audit into my entire tenure. They said they would find irregularities that could cost me everything. June, don't sign it, I said, stepping closer. It is a lie. I know it is a lie, she cried. But Sadie, I am 62 years old. I live alone. I can't lose my pension. They are powerful. You don't understand what they are doing. It isn't just a cover-up. It is a campaign. What do you mean? She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater. The Integrity Campaign. I saw the paperwork on the desk when I went in for the meeting. It is launching next week. It is a massive PR push for the council, billboards, social media, everything. The slogan is faith, family, future. They are selling the idea that Briar Glen is a sanctuary of traditional values. And I am a threat to that, I said. You are a stain, June said bluntly. You are the proof that their traditional values destroy children. They can't let you speak. Sadie, they have to discredit you before you open your mouth. Your mother is on the planning committee. Your sister is running the social media. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. Aubrey is the worst one, June said. Colleen believes her own lies. Aubrey knows she is lying, and she does it anyway because she likes the power. June reached into her car and pulled out a piece of paper. I didn't sign it. Not yet. But they gave me 24 hours. She handed me the unsigned affidavit. It was a masterpiece of legal fiction, blaming a lowly administrative assistant for the heartbreaking misunderstanding that kept the Long family from their daughter's graduation. I am sorry. June, I said. I am so sorry I dragged you into this. You didn't drag me, she said. I walked in. But Sadie, you need to know what they are saying about you. It isn't just about the graduation anymore. What are they saying? June looked away, toward the muddy water of the river. Aubrey has been posting in the local moms groups. She isn't naming you directly, but everyone knows. She is asking for prayers for a family member who struggles with severe mental illness. She is talking about manic episodes and paranoid delusions. I don't have delusions, I said. I have anxiety. I had panic attacks in college because I was working 3 jobs and my parents were starving me of affection. She is using that, June said. She is taking those panic attacks, the times you had to leave class, the time you fainted in the library, and she is spinning them. She is saying you have a history of inventing trauma to get attention. She is saying the viral video was just another episode. I closed my eyes. It was brilliant, in a sick way. They were taking the symptoms of their abuse and using them as proof that I was the problem. If I screamed, I was unstable. If I cried, I was manic. If I fought back, I was toxic. Go home, June, I said. Don't sign the paper. Tell them you need a lawyer to review it. Stall them. I can't afford a lawyer, she whispered. I will find one, I said. Just give me a day. June nodded, got back in her rusty Civic, and drove away. I needed evidence, hard evidence. The calendar was good, but Colleen had dismissed it. The email from June was strong, but June was vulnerable. I needed something official. I drove to the university. I went straight to the Alumni Relations office. The office was bright and cheerful, decorated with pennants and photos of smiling graduates. The receptionist was a student, bubbly and oblivious. Hi, I said. I am an alum, class of 2014. I wanted to buy a copy of my stage photo. You know, The one they take when you shake the dean's hand? Oh, sure, she said. We have all those digitized. What is your name? Sadie Long. Well, Sadie Miller back then. She tapped on her keyboard. Okay, 2014, May, College of Humanities. She scrolled and scrolled. Her frown deepened. That is weird. What? I see the list, she said. I see Miller, Sadie, but there is no thumbnail. It just says, File not found. Can you check the master folder? I asked, my heart thumping. Let me call the archivist, she said. She picked up the phone. A minute later, a man in a tweed jacket came out from the back. He looked annoyed. Can I help you? My graduation photo is missing, I said. I would like to know why. He looked at me over his spectacles. Digital files get corrupted sometimes. It happens. Only mine? I asked. Is anyone else's file corrupted? He didn't answer. He walked around the desk and looked at the screen. He typed in a code. It wasn't corruption, he muttered, almost to himself. Then he caught himself. It looks like the image was removed from the public archive. Removed by whom? I can't say, he said, straightening up, but we have had some requests recently from community partners for promotional materials. What kind of requests? He looked around the empty lobby, then lowered his voice. The Faith and Family Council is doing a display on excellence in education. They asked for access to the archives to select images. They also asked us to clean up any images that didn't meet their quality standards. And my photo didn't meet the standards? I don't know, he said, stepping back. All I know is that the file is gone. I can't help you. Ms. Miller. It is Ms. Long, I said. Right, he said, turning away. Sorry. I walked out of the building. They were erasing the visual proof. They knew that if I produced a photo of me walking across that stage alone, looking devastated, it would contradict their story of a happy celebration in spirit. So they deleted it. I sat on a bench on the quad, feeling the weight of the institutional wall I was hitting. They had keys I didn't have. They had passwords I couldn't guess. My phone pinged. It was Leah. Don't watch this, but you need to see it. Below the text was a link to a TikTok video. I clicked it against my better judgment. The video started with ominous, minor key piano music. The screen flashed black and white. It showed a clip of my viral speech, the part where I said, "The people who were supposed to clap for you kept their hands in their laps." But the audio was slowed down, making me sound slurred and strange. Then, text appeared on the screen in jagged red font. When you expose family secrets for fame, but forget we know the truth. The video cut to a photo of me from college. It was a bad photo, taken at a party where I'd been crying after a fight with my parents. My mascara was running. I looked unhinged. New text appeared. Some people change their names to hide their past. Some people change their names to hide their shame. The video ended with a logo. Briar Glen Youth for Truth. I clicked on the profile. It was a brand new account. The bio read, "Defending our community from toxic narratives. Faith Family Future." It had 5,000 views. The comments were already rolling in. She looks crazy. Imagine doing this to your own parents. I heard she was on drugs in college. It was a digital lynch mob, and it was being led by a youth group that was undoubtedly funded by the council. I put the phone down on the bench. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity. This wasn't a family squabble. This was a coordinated PR campaign. They were treating me like a political opponent. They were using opposition research, message discipline, and media suppression. I had been trying to fight them with emotion. I had been trying to get closure. But you don't get closure from a corporation. You get a settlement, or a verdict. I needed to stop being Sadie the daughter. I needed to become Sadie the plaintiff. I picked up my phone and called Leah. "I need a lawyer," I said. "Not a family lawyer, a shark." "I found one," Leah said immediately. "Her name is Mira Cates. She's in Starkweather County, about 40 minutes from you. She sued the school board there last year for hiding bullying records and won. She hates the council. Send me the address. I drove out of Briar Glen, crossing the county line into Starkweather. The landscape didn't change, but the air felt lighter. I was leaving their jurisdiction. Mira Cates's office was in a strip mall, sandwiched between a vape shop and a tax preparer. The sign on the door was peeling vinyl. Cates Law, Civil Litigation. I walked in. The office was cluttered with boxes of files. A woman was sitting behind a desk that looked like it had been salvaged from a surplus auction. She was about 50, with graying hair chopped short and a cigarette burning in an ashtray. Despite the no smoking sign on the wall, she looked up at me with eyes that were sharp as flint. "You must be the girl who went viral," she said, her voice like gravel. "Leah called me." "I am Sadie Long," I said. "I know who you are," Mira said. "And I know who your daddy is. Graham Long. He is a piece of work. Tried to get me disbarred 5 years ago when I represented a teacher he wanted fired." She gestured to a chair. "Sit down. Tell me everything. And don't give me the sob story. Give me the facts, dates, times, documents." I sat. I opened my bag. I took out the calendar photo, the email from June, the transcript of the family restructure of my bank account, the screenshot of the Facebook party, the affidavit June was being forced to sign. I laid them out on her desk like tarot cards. Mira smoked in silence, picking up each piece of paper, examining it, and placing it back down. When I was done explaining, she stubbed out her cigarette. "It is a mess," she said, "but it is a beautiful mess. Can we win?" I asked. "Win what?" Mira asked, leaning back. "Defamation? Maybe. Intentional infliction of emotional distress? Harder to prove. Fraud? The bank account is past the statute of limitations." "I don't care about the money," I said. "I want the truth. I want them to stop lying about me." Mira laughed, a dry barking sound. "Honey, the truth is irrelevant in a town like Briar Glen. The truth is whatever the loudest person says it is. And right now, they have the microphone. So what do? We change the venue," Mira said. "We don't fight them in the court of public opinion. We fight them in a court of record. We file for injunctive relief to stop the destruction of university records. We file preservation letters. We depose your mother. We depose June before they can bully her into silence." She leaned forward, her expression deadly serious. "But I need to warn you, Sadie, this isn't going to be a TV movie. It is going to be ugly. They are going to drag every skeleton you have out of the closet. They are going to depose your ex-boyfriends. They are going to subpoena your therapy records. They don't have to win in court. They just have to exhaust you. They have the money to keep this going until you run out of cash or sanity. They have already exhausted me," I said. "I have been tired for 12 years. I am done being tired." Mira looked at me for a long moment. She saw something she liked. "All right," she said. "Retainer is $2,000. I will cut you a deal on the hourly because I want to see Graham Long sweat." I wrote the check. "One more thing," Mira said, picking up the phone. "This integrity campaign they are launching, we are going to rain on their parade, but you have to be boring. No more speeches, no more emotional outbursts. From this moment on, you are a block of ice. You document, you record, and you refer all questions to me." "I can be ice," I said. "Good," Mira said. "Because winter is coming for the Long family." I walked out of her office into the cool evening air. I felt different, lighter. I wasn't just a ghost haunting my hometown anymore. I was a litigant. And for the first time since I saw that viral video, I didn't feel like crying. I felt like working. The war did not begin with a shout. It began with the rhythmic, mechanical whir of a fax machine in Mira Cates's office. We were sending preservation letters. It is a dry legal term for a very aggressive act. Essentially, we were telling Briar Glen State University, the Cedar Hollow Church, and the Briar Glen Faith and Family Council that if they deleted, shredded, or lost One more scrap of paper related to Sadie Long or the events of May 2014. They would be facing a judge. Mira sat behind her desk, a lit cigarette dangling from her lip, signing the letters with a flourish. "This is the shot across the bow," she said, her voice raspy. "Until now, they thought you were just a hysterical daughter looking for closure. Closure is soft. Litigation is hard. They are about to realize they can't pray this away." I watched the pages slide through the machine. Each one was a brick in the wall I was building. I felt a strange, cold satisfaction. For 12 years, my family had relied on the fact that I was emotional, that I would cry, scream, and eventually retreat because I wanted to be loved. They didn't know what to do with a version of me that just wanted to be accurate. "What happens next?" I asked. "Now we wait for the cockroaches to scatter," Mira said. "They will try to clean up the mess, but we have already marked the spots." She handed me a copy of the letter addressed to the council. It named Graham Long, Colleen Long, and Aubrey Long specifically. It demanded the preservation of all internal communications regarding disciplinary strategies, family integrity initiatives, and graduation attendance protocols. "Protocols," I repeated. "Do you really think they wrote it down?" "Sadie," Mira said, leaning back, "people like your parents are narcissists, but they are also bureaucrats. They document everything because they believe they are right. They don't shred the evidence because they don't see it as evidence. They see it as scripture." She was right. And that afternoon, the first crack in the facade appeared. I met Evan again, this time in the parking lot of a Home Depot 2 towns over. He was terrified. He kept checking his rearview mirror, his hands gripping the steering wheel of his truck. "You have to stop. Sadie," he said the moment I got into the passenger seat. "Dad is—" I have never seen him like this. He is not yelling. He is just quiet. It is worse. "I can't stop. Evan," I said. "They are erasing me. If I stop now, I am admitting that I deserved it." "Aubrey is going after you," Evan said. "She is calling people. She is calling her friends from college who work in HR. She is trying to find out who holds the grants for your nonprofit." "I know," I said. "My lawyer is handling it." "You don't know everything," Evan said. He looked sick. He looked like a man who was carrying a stone in his stomach. "Sadie, there is something I never told you. Something about the internship. The one at the mayor's office, the summer before your senior year." I froze. I remembered that summer perfectly. I had wanted that internship desperately. It was unpaid, but it would have given me the credits I needed to graduate early. I had applied, interviewed, and been told I was a finalist. And then, silence. I ended up working double shifts at the Dairy Queen instead. "What about it?" "You didn't lose it because of experience," Evan said. "Aubrey. She knew the coordinator. They were in the same sorority, just a few years apart. Aubrey sent an email. I saw it on her laptop when she left it open." "What did it say?" "It said that you were brilliant but unreliable," Evan whispered. "She said you had a history of dropping projects when things got tough. She said, as her sister, I would love for her to get this, but as a professional, I have to warn you. She tanked it. Sadie, she did it on purpose." I felt the air leave the lungs. Aubrey, my little sister, the one I had braided hair for, the one I had driven to soccer practice. "Why?" I asked. "Why would she do that? She was 20 years old." "Because you were the golden child in school," Evan said. "Grades-wise, at least. And Dad was always comparing us. Why can't you study like Sadie?" So when you started to rebel, when you started asking for independence, Aubrey saw a chance to be the good one. If she could make you look unstable, she became the reliable one. She did it to survive. Sadie, just like I did. "That isn't survival," I said, my voice shaking. "That is predation." "Maybe," Evan said. "But she won, didn't she? She is the social media director for the council. She drives a BMW, and you are here." "I am here," I said. And I am not leaving. I got out of the truck. I felt sick. But it was a clarifying sickness. It burned away the last remnants of nostalgia. These weren't my family members. They were operatives in a cell. And I was the target. That night, the email from June arrived. It was titled simply, "Found it." Attached was a PDF. It was a scan of a document, yellowed at the edges, dated November 2013, 6 months before my graduation. The header read, Cedar Hollow Church, Family Discipleship Strategy Meeting. The subhead, The Prodigal Protocol, Redirecting the Wayward Adult Child. I opened the file. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a memo outlining a character-building initiative for families dealing with secular drift in their college-aged children. It was written in that sickeningly sweet corporate pastoral language that made cruelty sound like therapy. Point 4. The fast of validation. When the adult child seeks worldly praise, grades, accolades, degrees, the faithful parent must withhold the sugar of validation. Praise feeds pride. Silence feeds humility. By removing the audience, we force the child to look inward and upward. Point 5. The broken expectation. To break the entitlement of the modern youth, we must disrupt their ceremonial expectations. Birthdays, graduations, and milestones are opportunities to demonstrate that the family unit operates on God's time, not the world's schedule. A disruption of these events can serve as a powerful reset button for the child's ego. I read it 3 times. A disruption of these events. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just my family being petty. It was a doctrine. I was a demonstration. They hadn't missed my graduation because they were busy. They hadn't missed it because they were mad. They had missed it because they were following a manual. They were good students of a bad theology. And I was the final exam. I printed the document. I put it in the folder with the others. The stack was getting thick now. It was a paper tombstone for the parents I thought I had. 2 days later, we met at the mediation center. Mira had arranged it. She told their lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Vance, who wore a tie that cost more than my car, that we were prepared to file a federal lawsuit for defamation and interference with business relations unless they agreed to sit down. The room at Kate's Rowell Mediation Center was beige and airless. A long table separated us. On one side sat Graham, Colleen, and Aubrey. Graham looked furious, his face a mottled red. Colleen looked tragic, clutching a tissue. Aubrey looked like she was auditioning for a sorrowful biopic. She was wearing black, no makeup, and kept dabbing at dry eyes. On the other side sat me and Mira. Mira put a recorder on the table. "This is on the record," she said. "By agreement." "Mr." Vance nodded. "We are here to listen," he said smoothly, "though my clients maintain that this is a private family matter that has been blown out of proportion by Ms. Long's emotional state." "Let us skip the preamble," Mira said. She didn't open her file. She didn't need to. "We have evidence that the Long family engaged in a coordinated effort to sabotage Sadie Long's professional reputation, both in 2014 and continuously through the present day. We have evidence of interference with university records, and we have evidence that the no-show at the graduation was a premeditated act designed to cause emotional distress." "That is absurd," Graham spat. He couldn't help himself. "Premeditated? We missed a date on a calendar. It happens to everyone." "It doesn't happen to everyone," I said. I kept my voice low. "Most parents don't write no-show in the margin." Graham flinched. Colleen put a hand on his arm. "Sadie," Colleen said, her voice trembling, "we know you are hurt. We know you felt abandoned. And for that, we are so sorry. If we could go back and change that day, we would." "Would you?" I asked. "Or would you just make sure June didn't see you change the date?" Colleen's eyes hardened. June Halstead is a confused woman. She has always had it out for us. "And the memo?" I asked. "The prodigal protocol? Did June write that too?" Silence descended on the room. It was heavy and thick. "Mr." Vance looked at his clients. He clearly didn't know about the memo. "I don't know what you're talking about," Graham said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I think you do," Mira said. She slid a copy of the scan across the table. November 2013. Cedar Hollow Church. You were on the board. Graham, you approved this initiative. The fast of validation. The broken expectation. Graham stared at the paper. His jaw worked. Aubrey spoke up. Her voice was high and thin. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You are twisting church teachings to make yourself a victim. You always do this. Sadie, you make everything about yourself, even now. We are sitting here, wasting money on lawyers, because you can't get over the fact that you didn't get enough applause 12 years ago." "I didn't want applause, Aubrey," I said. "I wanted parents." "You wanted an audience," Aubrey countered, her sad sister act dropping instantly. "And now you are getting one on the internet. You are ruining Dad's reputation. You are ruining the council's work. Do you have any idea how selfish that is?" "The council's work," Mira interjected. "You mean the integrity campaign? The one you are leading? Aubrey?" Aubrey glared at her. "Yes, and Sadie is trying to destroy it because she is jealous that she isn't part of this community anymore." "I am not jealous," I said. "I am horrified." Graham slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Enough!" he roared. "You ungrateful girl. We gave you everything. We gave you a home. We gave you faith. And this is how you repay us? By digging up old emails? By spying on us?" "I am not spying. Dad," I said. "I am remembering." "You are lying," he shouted. "We did what we had to do. It was supposed to teach you." He stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. He had said it. It was supposed to teach you. He hadn't said it was a mistake. He hadn't said, "We forgot." He had admitted intent. Colleen turned to look at him. Her gaze was not loving. It was lethal. She was staring at him the way a handler stares at a dog that has just bitten the wrong person. "Graham," she whispered. Graham looked around the room. Realizing what he had done, he sank back into his chair, his face turning a gray color. "Teach me what?" I asked softly. "That I didn't matter? That love is conditional? That you are not the center of the universe," Graham hissed, trying to salvage his authority. "That you needed to learn humility." "Thank you," Mira said. She tapped the recorder. "That will be all the confirmation we need." "Mr." Vance looked like he wanted to vanish. "I think we should take a recess." "No recess," Aubrey said. She stood up. Her face was dry now. No more tears. She looked exactly like Colleen. "You think you have won? Sadie? You have a recording of an old man losing his temper. Big deal. No judge is going to care about why we missed a party 12 years ago." She leaned over the table, her eyes boring into mine. "But your boss might care," she said. "At Juniper and Slate?" My blood went cold. "What did you do?" "I made a few calls," Aubrey said, checking her nails. "I found out that your nonprofit relies on donor trust. I wondered if they knew that their communications manager is currently harassing a religious nonprofit in Ohio. I wondered if they knew she was mentally unstable and prone to vendettas." "You called my job," I said. It wasn't a question. "I spoke to a board member," Aubrey said, smiling. "Hollis Keene. He was very concerned. He said he would hate for your personal drama to impact the foundation's giving." She picked up her purse. "Go ahead and sue us. Sadie. But by the time this gets to court, you won't have a job to pay this shark of a lawyer. Come on, Mom. Come on, Dad." She walked out. Colleen followed, casting one last look of disappointment at me, not because they were cruel, but because I was making them look bad. Graham followed. Defeated but still seething, I sat in the chair, unable to move. "They can't do that," I whispered. "Can they?" Mira looked grim. "They just did." My phone rang. It was the executive director of Juniper Slate. I stared at the screen. Answer it, Mira said. Be boring, be factual. I picked up. This is Sadie. Sadie? Hi, my boss said. Her voice was too bright, too careful. Listen, I just got off a weird call with Hollis Keene. He mentioned something about a legal dispute. In Ohio? Involving his wife's family network? I am handling a private family matter, I said, my voice steady despite the shaking of my hand. Okay, she said. Look, I know you are on leave. But Hollis was using words like harassment and instability. He implied that the Keene Foundation might pause their funding if there is a reputational risk attached to our staff. I closed my eyes. They were doing it. They were reaching across 3 states to strangle my livelihood. I understand, I said. I assure you, there is no merit to those claims. I believe you, she said. But Sadie, perception is reality in this business. We need this to go away. Can you make it go away? I will handle it, I said. Good. Keep me posted. She hung up. I put the phone down. I felt the old urge, the one I had fought for 10 years, the urge to run, to pack my bag, drive to a new state, change my name again, become Sadie Smith, Sadie Jones, disappear. They win when you vanish, a voice said. It wasn't Mira. It was Leah's voice in my head. They win when you vanish. I looked at Mira. I am not quitting, I said. Good, Mira said. So what is the play? Aubrey wants a war of reputation, I said. She wants to paint me as the crazy, vindictive daughter. If I fight back screaming, I prove her right. So don't scream, Mira said. I opened my laptop right there on the mediation table. I am going to write a statement, I said. To my employer and to the board. I am going to attach the calendar, the memo, the transcript, and the recording of Dad admitting it was planned. Risky, Mira said. Internal disputes usually stay internal. It isn't a dispute anymore, I said. It is a whistleblower complaint. If Hollis Keene is using his financial leverage to silence a woman who is exposing abuse, that is a liability for Juniper and Slate. I am going to frame it as a protection of the nonprofit's integrity. I am not the liability. Mira, the donor is... Mira smiled. It was a terrifying smile. That is good. That is very good. I wrote the email. It took me an hour. It was precise. It was devoid of adjectives. It was boringly factual. Subject: confidential disclosure regarding external pressure on staff. Dear Board of Directors, it has come to my attention that a donor, influenced by personal connections to the Briar Glen Faith and Family Council, has attempted to leverage funding to influence employment decisions at Juniper Slate. This pressure is being applied to suppress evidence regarding a documented history of familial, financial, and emotional abuse, evidenced by the attached records. I hit send. I had just nuked the bridge to my old life, but I had also reinforced the foundation of my new one. Now, I said, closing the laptop. I have one more thing to do. What? Mira asked. The integrity campaign launches tonight, I said. At Cedar Hollow. I want to see it. Sadie, don't go there, Mira warned. It is a hornet's nest. I am not going to sting, I said. I am just going to watch. I drove to the church as the sun was setting. The parking lot was full. The new SUV with the council decal was parked in the front row. I slipped into the back of the fellowship hall. It was decorated with banners. Faith, family, future. There were balloons. There was a punch bowl. Colleen was on the stage, holding a microphone. She looked radiant. She was talking about the sanctity of the home, about the need to protect our children from the confusion of the world. Aubrey was manning a table near the front, handing out glossy brochures. I stayed in the shadows near the entrance. I wore sunglasses, even though we were indoors. I pulled my coat tight. Along the side wall, there was a display. It was a massive corkboard covered in photos. The header read, Our Legacy, Cedar Hollow Graduates. It was a timeline. It showed photos of graduates from the church youth group. year by year, going back 2 decades. I walked over to it. I found 2012. There was Mark Evans. There was Sarah Jenkins. I found 2013. I looked for 2014. There was a gap, a physical space where a photo should have been. The name Sadie Long was nowhere. It wasn't just that they hadn't put up my photo. They had arranged the other photos to hide the gap, but the spacing was slightly off. It was a scar on the timeline. I looked at 2016. There was a large photo of Evan, smiling in his cap and gown, surrounded by Mom and Dad. The caption read, "Evan Long, a testament to faithful parenting." I felt a cold wind blow through me. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had curated a reality where I didn't exist. I was the error they had deleted from the spreadsheet. I looked around the room. I saw the smiling faces, the neighbors, the teachers, the people who had watched me grow up. They were all nodding along to Colleen's speech. They were eating the cookies. They were accepting the lie because the lie was comfortable. If I walked onto that stage and screamed the truth, they would drag me out. They would call the police. They would say, "See, we told you she was unstable." I needed something else. I needed to show them the gap. I needed to force them to look at the empty space where I should be. I turned and walked out of the hall. I sat in my car in the dark parking lot. I watched the people leaving, laughing, shaking hands. I knew what I had to do. It wouldn't be a lawsuit. It wouldn't be a press release. It wouldn't be a scream. It would be a graduation. I picked up my phone and called Mira. "I need the file," I said. "The video file from the archives. The one the archivist said was deleted." "He said it was gone, Sadie." "It isn't gone," I said. "He said it was removed from the public archive. That means it is on a backup drive somewhere. Subpoena it. Threaten them with destruction of evidence. Get me that tape." "What are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to finish my speech," I said. "The one they interrupted 12 years ago." I started the engine. The plan was forming in my mind, sharp and crystalline. I wasn't going to burn the town down. I was going to turn on the lights, and I was going to make sure that when they looked at the stage, they didn't see a crazy woman. They would see the ghost they created. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, printed on heavy cream stock with gold foil lettering. It was sitting on my desk at Juniper and Slate when I returned from lunch. "The Board of Directors of Hallowell Community College requests the honor of your presence as the keynote speaker for the Adult Learner Commencement." I stared at the paper. My hands, usually steady, felt a faint tremor run through the nerves. Hallowell was our biggest partner. This wasn't a small workshop. This was their main summer graduation. There would be 500 graduates. There would be a live stream. There would be local press. It was exactly the kind of stage I had spent a decade avoiding. My boss, the executive director, leaned into my office doorway. She looked tentative, her earlier concerns about the Ohio situation still lingering in the air. "They asked for you specifically," she said. "Because of the video, the students feel like you understand the stakes. I told them you were on leave, but they said they would hold the slot for 48 hours. I ran my thumb over the raised lettering. A commencement. The irony was so sharp it almost drew blood. My family had erased my graduation to teach me humility. Now, 12 years later, I was being asked to define the meaning of graduation for hundreds of strangers. "I will do it," I said. She blinked, surprised. "Are you sure? With everything going on?" "I am sure," I said. "It is time to finish the speech." I called Mira Cates immediately. "They are going to see it," I told her. "The ceremony is being live-streamed. The council monitors my name. If I walk onto that stage, they will view it as an act of war." "Good," Mira's voice crackled over the line. "Let them watch. But Sadie, you have to be careful. You can't use the podium to litigate. If you name them, if you make it a personal attack, you give them the ammunition to sue you for defamation. You have to thread a needle here." "I know," I said. "But before I speak, I need one last thing." "I was about to call you," Mira said. "A package came to the office this morning. No return address. Just a postmark from Briar Glen." I drove to Starkweather County in a daze. The landscape was lush with high summer green. The corn in the fields standing tall and soldier straight. It looked idyllic. It looked like a lie. Mira was waiting for me. She had a large manila envelope on her desk. She was wearing gloves. "I haven't scanned it yet," she said. "I wanted you to see it first." She slid the contents out. It was a photocopy of a roster. The header read, Briar Glen Faith and Family Council, Education Oversight Committee, 2013. The list of names was typed in a neat column. Chair, Reverend Thomas. Secretary, Martha Keene. Member, Colleen Long. Member, Dr. Arthur Prynne. There was a handwritten note clipped to the roster. The handwriting was jagged, hurried. As if written by someone looking over their shoulder, Prynne was the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs. He had admin access to the scheduling system. He gave the login to the committee. They made it policy. I stared at the name, Dr. Prynne. I remembered him. He was a small, nervous man who always spoke about institutional harmony. "This links the church directly to the university database," Mira said, her voice low. "Your mother wasn't just a member of a club. She was on a committee that had back-end access to your school records. This wasn't a clerical error. It was an unauthorized data breach sanctioned by a religious nonprofit." "Can we use it?" I asked. "It is anonymous," Mira said. "In court, it is hearsay. Without a witness to authenticate it, it is just a piece of paper. If we use this and it turns out to be fake, or if Prynne denies it, we look reckless." "It isn't fake," I said. It fits everything." "I believe you," Mira said. "But belief isn't evidence. We need verification." "I will get it," I said. "Sadie, don't go back there," Mira warned. "They are cornered animals right now." "I am not going to the house," I said. "I am going to the source." I drove back to Briar Glen one last time. I didn't stop at the motel. I didn't drive past Elm Street. I drove straight to the university library, to the archives department. It was 4 p.m. The campus was quiet. I walked into the archives office with a preservation letter in one hand and the roster in the other. The archivist, the man in the tweed jacket who had dismissed me days ago, looked up. When he saw me, his face paled. "Ms. Long," he said. "I told you that the file is—" "I am not here to ask," I said, cutting him off. I placed the preservation letter on his desk. "This is a formal legal notice demanding the preservation of all digital backups, specifically regarding the commencement of May 2014, and this," I placed the roster next to it, "is evidence that a university administrator may have conspired with an external group to alter student records." He stared at the roster. He saw Dr. Prynne's name. He swallowed hard. "I am offering you a choice," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly steady. "You can continue to tell me the file is missing, in which case my lawyer will subpoena your personal hard drive and your email logs to see who asked you to delete it, or you can check the backup server one more time." He looked at the door. He looked at the phone. He was sweating. He was a man who wanted to protect his pension, not a conspiracy. "The backup server is in the basement," he said quietly. "It is not connected to the main network. Sometimes files that are deleted from the public interface remain there for 30 days before the overwrite." "Check it," I said. He stood up. "Wait here." He was gone for 20 minutes. I stood by his desk, not moving. I felt like a statue carved from ice. When he returned, he was holding a small black thumb drive. He didn't look at me. He placed it on the desk and slid it across the surface with 2 fingers. "I found a raw footage file," he whispered. "Camera B. It was the wide shot of the stage. It wasn't processed for the highlight reel." "Thank you," I said. I took the drive. It felt heavy, like it contained lead. I drove to the Briar Glen Motor Inn. I locked the door. I wedged the chair. I sat on the bed and opened my laptop. I plugged in the drive. The video file popped up. COMM_2014_CAM_B _RAW. I clicked play. The video was grainy. A wide angle of the field house. I saw the rows of graduates in black gowns. I saw the stage. I fast-forwarded. 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I saw her. I saw myself. I was 22 years old. My hair was longer then. I was sitting in the third row. The camera angle was high, so I could see my face clearly when I turned. I watched myself turn around. Once, twice, I watched the younger Sadie scan the bleachers. I saw her eyes darting frantically back and forth. Searching Section C. I saw the moment she stopped searching. Her shoulders slumped. It was a tiny movement, barely visible, but I felt it in my own body as I watched. She looked down at her lap. She adjusted her tassel. Then, the dean called her name, Sadie Elizabeth Long. I watched myself stand up, and that was the moment that broke me. I didn't cry on the tape. I didn't frown. I put on a smile. It was a bright, plastic, terrible smile. I walked across the stage with my head high, shaking the dean's hand, accepting the diploma. I walked back to my seat, sat down, and folded my hands in my lap. I looked so calm. I looked so fine. In the motel room, I let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. I hadn't just been abandoned. I had been trained. I had been trained to hide my pain so perfectly that nobody would be uncomfortable. I had performed okayness because I knew that if I showed a single crack, if I shed a single tear, they would use it against me. Don't be dramatic. Sadie, I had spent 12 years thinking I was strong, but I wasn't strong. I was compliant. I had made myself easy to erase. I closed the laptop. I wiped my face. I was done performing. My phone buzzed. It was Evan. They know you are speaking. The text read, Aubrey found out about the Hallowell livestream. She is drafting a statement. She is going to post it on the Faith and Family page the morning of the speech. What does it say? I typed back. It says the family is heartbroken that you are using a public platform to air grievances during a mental health crisis. It asks the community to pray for you but to disregard your confused narrative. Mom is calling the prayer chain captains tonight. They are going to flood the comments section. They were preempting me. They were going to paint me as a lunatic before I even opened my mouth. I called Mira. I have the footage, I said. And I know their play. They are going to release a statement calling me unstable. If they do that, Mira said, we sue for libel. No, I said. If we sue, it takes 2 years. I want to stop them now, but I don't want to do it on Facebook. What are you thinking? The timeline, I said. The packet, we have the emails, the calendar photo, the bank records, June's affidavit, the memo about the prodigal protocol, the roster, and now the video. It is a strong file, Mira said. I don't want to release it to the press, I said. That is what they expect. They expect a tabloid war. I want to submit it to the University Ethics Office and to the Ombudsman of the Regional Accreditation Board. Mira was silent for a moment. Then she let out a low whistle. Sadie, she said, that is nuclear. If you file a formal ethics complaint alleging that university administrators conspired with a religious group to alter student records, that triggers a mandatory external investigation. They can't sweep that under the rug. The accreditation of the university would be at risk. Exactly, I said. It is boring, it is bureaucratic, and it is undeniable. Do it, Mira said. I will draft the cover letter. We will file it confidentially the morning of the speech. If they post their statement calling you crazy, we will have a time-stamped federal filing proving we went through proper channels to report institutional corruption. Let's write it, I said. We spent the next 48 hours assembling the document. It was 70 pages long. It was dry, factual, and devastating. We didn't use emotional language. We used terms like fiduciary breach, unauthorized access, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. On the morning of the commencement, I submitted the packet via encrypted upload to the Ombudsman's office. Mira sent a physical copy via courier to the university chancellor. Then, I put on my suit. It was a deep emerald green, sharp, professional. I drove to the Hallowell Community College auditorium. The parking lot was full. The sky was a brilliant, aching blue. I walked backstage. The air conditioning was humming. The production crew was running cables. "Sadie!" The organizer waved at me. "You are up in 20 minutes. The live stream is already active. We have 2,000 people watching online. That is a record for us." "Great," I said. My pulse was slow. My hands were steady. I checked my phone one last time. Leah had sent me a screenshot. Aubrey had posted it. On the official Briar Glen Faith and Family Council page, a black square with white text. A message to our community. It is with heavy hearts that we ask for prayers for our daughter. Sadie, as many of you know, she has struggled for years with significant mental health challenges that have led to estrangement. We are saddened to learn she intends to use a public platform today to spread falsehoods about her family and her faith. We forgive her, and we ask that you view her words through the lens of compassion for someone who is unwell. It had 300 likes. The comments were full of prayer hands and "Stay strong, Colleen." They had fired their shot. Now it was my turn. I walked out onto the stage. The lights were blinding. I couldn't see the audience, just a sea of darkness beyond the glare. I adjusted the microphone. I took a breath. I didn't look for my parents in the dark. I knew they weren't there. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. "Good morning," I said. My voice boomed through the auditorium, clear and resonant. "We are here to celebrate a finish line," I began. "But I want to talk to you about the starting line. I want to talk about the things we carry across it." I looked into the camera lens. I knew they were watching. I knew Aubrey was refreshing the feed on her phone. I knew Graham was sitting in his leather chair, waiting for me to scream so he could call me crazy. 12 years ago, I said, I graduated from college. It should have been a day of joy. But when I looked out into the audience, the seats reserved for my family were empty. A hush fell over the room. "For a long time," I continued, "I was told that their absence was a mistake, a mix-up. But recently, I learned the truth. It wasn't an error. It was a policy." I paused. I let the word hang there. "I learned that I was part of an experiment in silence," I said. "I learned that the people who raised me believed that withholding love was a way to build character. They believed that if they made me small enough, if they denied me the celebration I had earned, I would become humble. I would become compliant. I would become theirs." I gripped the podium. "There is a quiet violence in being erased," I said. "It doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't break bones. It breaks your sense of reality. It makes you wonder if you actually exist, or if you are just a projection of someone else's expectations." I saw a woman in the front row wipe her eyes. "But here is what I learned," I said, my voice rising. "You cannot build a person by subtracting from them. You cannot teach love by demonstrating indifference. To anyone here today who is scanning the crowd for a face that isn't there, to anyone who has been told that their achievement is too much or too dramatic, I am here to tell you, you are real, your work is real, and you do not need their witness to be whole." I leaned into the mic. "We graduate today not for the people who stayed home," I said. "We graduate for the people we are becoming, and that person is too big to be erased." I stepped back. For a second, there was silence. Then, the applause started. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. It started in the back and rolled forward like a wave. People stood up. Graduates threw their caps. I walked off the stage. I didn't faint. I didn't cry. I felt solid. Leah met me in the wings. She was holding her phone, her eyes wide. "Sadie," she said. "Look." She handed me the phone. It was the comments section of the Faith and Family Council's post, the one Aubrey had written to discredit me. It was melting down. User: Sarah Jenkins, 12. Wait, is she talking about the prodigal thing? My parents did that to me too. They skipped my wedding because I married a Democrat. They said it was tough love. This is a policy? User: Mark Evans. 88. I went to Cedar Hollow. I remember the fast of validation sermon. This is real. They told our parents to ignore us. User. Briar Glen. Alum. I worked in the archives. I saw the list. Prin was involved. This girl is telling the truth. The narrative was slipping. Aubrey had tried to frame it as a specific mental health crisis, but I had framed it as a systemic issue, and because I hadn't named them, I hadn't looked vindictive. I had looked like a survivor. The comments were flooding in faster than Aubrey could delete them. User. Ohio. Mom. Shame on you. Colleen. Calling your daughter crazy for speaking the truth? We see you. User. Justice. For Sadie. My bank account was closed too. Same bank. Is this a pattern? They are losing control, Leah whispered. Real time. I handed the phone back. Let them. I went to the reception. I shook hands. I ate a cookie. I was boringly, beautifully normal. An hour later, as I was walking to my car, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Area code 614. Columbus. This is Sadie Long. Ms. Long, a formal voice said. This is Dr. Eris from the Regional Accreditation Board. We received a packet of documents from your legal counsel this morning regarding Briar Glen State University. Yes, I said. The allegations are severe, he said. We have contacted the university chancellor. An immediate freeze has been placed on all administrative records, and a formal inquiry has been opened. We would like to schedule a time to take your recorded statement. I am available tomorrow, I said. Thank you, he said. And Ms. Long? The video footage, it was compelling. I hung up. The investigation would take months. Heads would roll. Doctor. Prin would likely be fired. The council would lose its access. The integrity campaign was dead in the water, because integrity requires you to not be under federal investigation for fraud. I sat in my car. I checked my voicemail. There was one new message. It was from my mother. I pressed play. The background was quiet. No church music, no TV, just the hollow sound of a room where the air has been sucked out. Sadie, Colleen's voice said. She sounded old. She didn't sound angry or polished or pious. She sounded tired. We saw the speech, she said. Aubrey is very upset. People are saying terrible things on the internet. She paused. I heard her take a breath. I made your favorite pot roast today, she said, her voice cracking slightly. It is Sunday. We always have pot roast on Sunday. It was a non sequitur. It was a bizarre attempt to reset the stage to a time before I was a person, back when I was just a mouth to feed. We miss you, she whispered. We really do. You can still come home. Sadie. My thumb hovered over the delete button. You can still come home, she repeated, her voice firming up, the old steel returning to her spine. If you stop telling stories, even now, with her world collapsing, the condition remained. Come home, but leave your reality at the door. Come home, but be small. Come home, but agree to be erased. I looked out the windshield at the ocean. The sun was glittering on the water. I had a job. I had a lawyer. I had a friend. I had a name I had chosen for myself. No, I said to the empty car. I deleted the message. I put the car in drive and pulled out of the lot, merging onto the highway, heading north toward the city, toward the rest of my life. Thank you so much for listening to My Family Forgot My Graduation on Purpose, so I changed my name and never came back. This story was a journey into the quiet, often invisible world of family estrangement and the fight to reclaim one's own history. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please drop your city or country in the comments below. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed Sadie's journey of vindication, please consider subscribing to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice and resilience. And I want to hear from you. Do you think Sadie made the right choice by not naming them publicly? Or should she have burned it all down? Share your thoughts in English in the comments. Until next time.